this comic is unlike any other I've seen before. It's disturbing, unpleasant, and horrifying. The story, Glyceride, by Junji Ito, follows the lives of a family who live above a barbecue restaurant. Yui and her brother reside in the house with their father, who runs the restaurant. The entire house is permeated with the smell of grease, as oil is used frequently in cooking. As the story progresses, Yui's brother develops an unusual habit. He starts consuming bottles of frying oil in large quantities. Eventually, he develops blisters all over his body filled with oil. One day, when he runs out of oil to drink, he forces Yui to go fetch some. When she resists, her brother pins her down and squeezes his face until it all collapses onto her in a repulsive manner. But that's not where the story ends. Yui's father kills her brother with a frying pan and serves him to customers at the restaurant. Yui later discovers that her father has been secretly feeding her oil while she sleeps to ensure that she suffers the same fate as her brother. When she refuses to drink it, her father must find another source of income to support the restaurant's patrons. To make matters worse, the house is flooded with grease, which is flowing down from the ceiling. Yui discovers her father consuming oil bottles, and realizes that he has resorted to consuming his own leg. The story ends with pure oil leaking from his body. If you have trypophobia, avoid looking up this story, as it contains graphic and disturbing imagery. The story Glyceride is a complex and deeply unsettling narrative that explores themes of familial abuse, addiction, and mental illness. At the heart of the story is the dysfunctional relationship between Yui and her father, who is both the proprietor of the barbecue restaurant and the source of her family's suffering. Throughout the story, Yui's father is depicted as a controlling and abusive figure who uses food and oil to manipulate and harm his children. His actions reveal the extent to which he is willing to go to maintain his power and control over his family, even if it means resorting to violence and murder. The depiction of addiction is another key element of the story. Yui's brother's obsession with oil serves as a metaphor for addiction, highlighting the ways in which it can take over a person's life and lead them to make dangerous and self-destructive choices. The graphic descriptions of his blisters and the physical toll that his addiction takes on his body serve as a warning against the dangers of substance abuse. The overflowing grease that floods the family's home is a powerful symbol of the family's descent into madness and chaos. It's a physical manifestation of the filth and decay that permeates every aspect of their lives, reflecting the emotional and psychological damage that they have suffered at the hands of their father. This happened to me when I was around 14 years old. I was at a sort of religious class located far from our main school building. I was drawing my cartoon characters, waiting for my teacher. However, an hour had passed and he didn't come. One of my classmates went out to see what was wrong, and it turned out that our teacher didn't arrive yet. So we had to wait a bit longer. After she told us that information, we continued waiting. I started drawing again, until one of my friends, Aina, suddenly pulled on my sleeve and whispered, "Something is wrong with CT." I looked at CT, who was sitting at the back, with the loud group. Saying anything or laughing, well, it was quite weird seeing her like that, because she was the one who always talked a lot in that group. And then I saw that she was holding a small piece of black cardboard and a pocket knife. Since we had an art class that day, I thought that she might have been doing her homework at first, but I froze when I glanced the second time. She started carving something on the cardboard, and very aggressively. I couldn't see what she was carving, but she then woke up, went outside the classroom, and stood there, staring at something. Aina poked my shoulder, signaling that I should check out CT's cardboard. So I sneakily went to her seat to grab the piece of cardboard she left on the table, and went back to my seat. As soon as we flipped the cardboard over, we got goosebumps all over our bodies. Something was written on it. The words meant we didn't disturb them. They disturb us in our language. I looked at each other. When I got up to return the piece of cardboard seat, he was got up to return the piece of cardboard. CT was already in her seat and stared at me with a scrutinizing look on her face. I sat down and slid the piece of cardboard under my desk. All of a sudden, I had the sudden urge to know what the heck was going on. So I got up and went towards her with Aina. "Hey, CT, how's it going?" I asked, but she didn't answer my question. Then I could hear Aina whispering the Lord's Prayer, and my fear alarm started buzzing again. Then Aina tried to talk to City, but for some reason, she suddenly shuddered. And I knew the reason. City started to mumble the exact words that she had carved onto the cardboard, but this time her voice changed. Carved onto the cardboard, but this time her voice changed. She sounded like a demon. Her voice was deeper and lower than a man's, and her eyes simultaneously started to turn white. Her mumbling was getting louder, and now she began to scream while shaking her whole body. Everybody in the class stood on there and watched what CT was doing with fear. Before long, CT suddenly stopped, dropped her face slowly down on the desk, and began to sleep. I quickly returned to my seat and tried to take out the cardboard, but it was not there. I searched all over the classroom, even inside, but it was gone. The next morning I went to CT and asked her what she was doing in class yesterday, and she replied, "Oh, I was sleeping during the whole class." "You sure?" I asked again, but she said yes, nodding her head. Was my friend possessed? Could it be real? And what she told me next made my face turn white and my heart drop. Oh yeah, while I was sleeping yesterday, I was at some church and I saw a very beautiful stained glass window with a nun. I wonder who that nun was though. About 5 years ago, my friends and I were at the school, and we were joking about sneaking onto the roof after we noticed the ladder that was leading up to it. We all kept daring each other to do it, but no one actually said yes. Then someone dared me, so I said, "Sure, I'll do that. Meet me here tonight at 10 p.m. Everyone seemed surprised, but in reality, I was hoping that the ladder would be gone by that night so I wouldn't have to do it. I didn't want to do that actually. After that night, it was about 9:45 p.m., and then, I snuck out my window and headed over to the school again. I crossed my fingers that the ladder wouldn't be there, but unfortunately, once I got there, all but one of my friends was already waiting, and the ladder was still there. One of my friends snickered and told me, "You have to stay there for at least 5 minutes as well." I then sighed and said, "Fine." I really didn't want to get caught and suspended. So I walked over slowly hoping that something would happen to us. However, the place around us was so quiet. I reached the ladder and stepped onto it. It wobbled a little bit at first because it wasn't attached to the building. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, then continued to climb. The higher I climbed, the more and more the ladder was unstable, which made me worried, but I made it to the top anyhow. I sat down on the roof and looked down to see my friends, but when I scanned street, I couldn't see them at all. In confusion, I was about to shout out to find them, then I heard a loud bang, so I stood up and rushed to the edge of the roof. The ladder had fallen. I looked up trying to find my friends and said, "Gee guys, this ain't funny. Where are y'all?" My voice echoed through the dark in an empty street. The night was cold and I was getting really worried. The school wasn't that tall, but it was still a long way from the roof to the ground. I scanned the street one last time, hoping they would reveal themselves. Then, I saw something. Those red eyes were staring at me about 100 feet from me. I froze. What the heck is that? Froze. What the heck is that? Showing its teeth, the thing slowly smiled and the streetlight suddenly went out. Everything was pitch black. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or not. Then the lights turned back on and I could finally see that creature hiding behind another lamppost. It was close to me. Whenever the lights went out again and were turned back on, it came much closer. When it finally reached the final lamppost, I was shaking so hard. I tried to walk backward, but then accidentally stumbled, almost falling from the roof. However, I managed to stop myself. So I looked down, searching around everywhere, but the creature had disappeared. I thought maybe it's just a nightmare, but I was wrong. I could feel something was staring at me. I slowly turned my head and there it was. That thing was standing, towering over me. The creature was at least 10 feet tall and it had bloodshot eyes and the most evil smile I've ever seen. I tried to scream, but no noise came out. It growled at me and stepped forward. I guess I had no choice. I jumped off the roof, not realizing I was right next to the edge. When I fell off, I hit my head really hard against the ground. However, despite the pain, I jumped to my feet. I ran away from the building as fast as I could, glancing back at the roof to see if that thing was gone. Then I noticed that it was standing in front of a window in the school, still staring at me. I had to stop turning my head. I couldn't put those red eyes out of my mind during the time I was coming back home. When I finally made it back to my house, I ran inside. Of course, my parents yelled at me for being out late at night, but I wasn't really listening, because I was so scared. So I just apologized and then ran up to my bed. I had to hide under my covers for the whole night, too afraid to sleep. But the most horrible thing was what happened the next day. The next morning, when I argued with my friends about the previous night, leaving me alone, they were all confused and claimed they never went there. Leaving me alone? They were all confused and claimed they never went there. Then what were the messages from my friends that they were coming? And who were they that I saw yesterday? I couldn't say anything.